Okay, so I think we'll get started. So hi everyone, welcome to Sciclopedia. I'm so excited to have all of you here. And so yeah, just a quick rundown of the event again. So the first 2 hours will be a question and answer period with our lovely panelists. And then the last hour will be the breakout channels. Just a reminder that the Q&A portion is being recorded, and unfortunately, unlike Zoom, Microsoft Teams does not let me kind of just spotlight the speaker. And so if you don't want your face to be in the recording, just turn off your cameras, please, and keep your mics off unless you are speaking, just so we don't have a bunch of background noise in the recording. And so yeah, I'll introduce myself first. So my name is Cynthia, my pronouns are she and her, and I am the academic advocacy coordinator of the MSS and also basically your host today. And so I guess we'll move on and I'll let our panelists introduce themselves.
Hi, my name's Christian, and my pronouns are he, him, and I'm going into my third year of biochemistry in the biomedical research specialization, and I think that covers it.
Hi, my name is Haley. My pronouns are she and her. I am going into my fourth year of psychology, neuroscience, and behavior.
Hello, my name is Jessie. My pronouns are she, her. I'm in math and stats, and I'm going into my third year.
Hello, my name is Jonathan. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm going to my fourth year of the eyesight program concentrating in biochemistry.
Hi, my name is Julia. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm going into my fourth year of the Medical and Biological Physics Co-op program, but I started in the Chemical and Physical Sciences Gateway.
Hi, my name is Michaela. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm going into my third year of the Biomedical Discovery and Commercialization program. And I started in life science, and I did second year in biochemistry.
Okay, I think this works. Okay, hi, I'm Nayang. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm going into my fourth year at Chemical Biology Co-op, and I started out in the Chemical and Physical Sciences Gateway.
Hey, my name is Omer. My pronouns are he and him. I'm going into my third year of Honors Life Sciences, and I started in Life Sciences Gateway.
Hey everyone.
Hi,
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. Hi, my name is Rachel. I'm going into my fourth year of biology and environmental sciences. My pronouns are she, her, and I started in the environmental and earth sciences gateway.
Hey everyone, I'm Sam. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm going into my fourth year of math and computer science.
There you go. Hi everyone, my name is Samira. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm going into my fourth years of the Honors Kinesiology program.
My name's Savannah. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm going to my fourth year in medical radiation sciences with a specialization in radiography.
Perfect. I'm not sure if Amber or Josh are here yet. If not, we can just proceed and then they can join us a little later. So yeah, we'll move on to our question and answers, and we kind of have it sectioned off. And our first section is related to coursework and online learning. And the first question we have is, how do tutorials work? And we'll start with Sam.
Okay, yeah, so I'm generally just going to speak on math tutorials since those are the class I take. Usually it's just with a TA, and once a week you have them, and you just kind of will lightly go over like some of the general concepts that you were taught in the last week. And then usually they do also like practice problems. Like generally the tutorial, like the time will mostly just be practice problems. The TA will go through like a few. Often they'll like tell you in advance what problems they're doing so you can try them before, and that's usually helpful. And then they'll often also like let you give them problems if you've been struggling with some to practice. But yeah, it's generally that. There's no new content taught in tutorials. It's kind of just going over previous things. Yeah, that's it.
Perfect. Okay, and we'll move on to the second question, which is, what is the difference between lectures and tutorials? And we'll start with Omer.
Yeah, so I think Sam did a great job talking about tutorials, which is kind of part of this question too. But essentially, lectures are where you'll learn a lot of the concepts, part of your curriculum. It's going to be obviously larger sizes. Tutorials, like you mentioned, was smaller groups, so you can really work on more practice problems. And it's kind of in a lot of subjects, not just math, like you said. It could be more than that too. Sometimes in some elective tutorials, they'll be optional. So you can go in if you need to and ask the TA questions one-on-one, which is really helpful. And then for other classes like math and some science courses, you can go in and really get one-on-one help, but also learn and work through practice problems together. And some of them are mandatory. So you do have to go for your participation mark. But in general, the difference between lectures and tutorials is mainly how you learn. So in lectures, you're mainly taking notes and you're listening to your prof talk. And in tutorials, it's more taking notes, but also trying to understand the concepts and asking questions at the moment rather than waiting till the end of the lecture. So I hope that clears up some of the stuff.
Amazing. Okay, so the next question is, what are labs like and how do you write a lab report? We'll start with Omer again.
Okay, so labs are similar to tutorials in the sense that they're smaller group sizes usually. The way a lab is usually structured, so I'll speak on from my experience in Chem 1A03. So for Chem 1A03, which is a common course that a lot of people take in first year, you are expected to have looked over the lab report, done a pre-lab before coming to the lab, and hand in that pre-lab once you step foot into the lab. And in your first lecture or whatever, the prof explains this and what's expected of you, but you have to be like looking at the lab report before you go in. Then once you get in, depending on the subject, you do the experiment that's required. So in chemistry, you would do the titration that you need to do or whatever, work with your lab partner. And basically everything you need is in the lab report. So that includes how to write a lab report. So often you'll have an example in whatever lab report guide for the subject that you're working on has, and you can just flip to it, see, okay, this is expected of me. I need to have the methods, results, whatever. You can see the structure, and essentially you follow that as you write your lab report. And in other classes, it differs slightly, where for some classes you may not need to have a lab report during your lab. But generally in your first year chem courses, your first year bio courses, you will. In upper years, like it changes. They'll expect assignments more or group work, stuff like that. But yeah, that's essentially how labs work.
Nayan, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, honestly, a great explanation. I don't really know if I have anything else to add. I guess one thing that might be a little different from like high school lab I thought was like, especially for chem, you need to write your lab report like within like your 3-hour lab section. Like you don't get to like take it home, like think about it and hand it in the next day. I think with bio labs, they give you like a few days or like a week. Physics, I truly do not remember, but it's usually jarring the fact that you have to do like a 3-hour lab, but then also like hand in a lab report. Don't worry, it's not like it's like super simple. They usually ask for like, you know, like purpose, your materials and methods, your observations, some calculations, and like a brief conclusion and like 2 things you could have done better or like sources of error. So definitely very doable as long as you kind of come prepared, do the pre-lab, look it over, ask questions if you have any. But yeah.
Perfect. So we'll move on to the next question, which is, what is a thesis and what are the benefits of doing one? And we'll start with Jonathan.
Okay, so to my understanding, a thesis project is essentially an upper year project, so typically a fourth year project, but you can also complete in third year. And it's essentially a year long, so 8-month research project where you get to work directly under the supervision of a research supervisor or a principal investigator, and you're carrying out like a project. And what you do is you either work with a grad student or you work alone, and you're essentially building up your research repertoire as well as like your lab skills or your wet or dry lab skills or your clinical skills, and you're trying to come up with the answer to a question that you proposed at the beginning of the year. And there's a lot of benefits to doing a thesis, in my opinion. I think one of the biggest things is you get to develop your scientific communication skills. So by doing a thesis project, you're going to be doing lots of presentations. You're going to be trying to learn how to present really complex science in really simple and simplified ways. But also another benefit is like the mentorship and networking aspect. So when you're in a lab, you have access to the grad students, the PI or the supervisor himself or herself, and they're really helpful for providing career advice, life advice, what to do if you don't know what you want to do with your life, like that sort of thing. So, and then also, other than that, like the thesis project is really unique in the sense that it's a taste of what research is. So it's not like a full-time commitment where you're a grad student, you're always doing research, but it's a little taste almost as to what you might be interested in if you were to pursue a career somewhere along this path. And it kind of lets you know whether you like research or you don't like research. So I'll let Samira sort of carry on what I said.
Yeah, I think Jonathan did such a great job of describing that. But I guess from my experience, from what I'm learning from like what a thesis is, it's usually, I guess if I had to give a number, like 40 to 60 pages of like a written paper under the supervision of a professor. In kinesiology, sometimes you're doing it under your grad student, and it's really allowing you, how Jonathan said, to explore a topic of interest in depth. Maybe this interest was sparked through a course that you took, or you've been in contact with a professor asking questions and you really like the research. Maybe that's how you kind of got involved in doing a thesis and you really want to dip your toe to see if this is something you want to do in like the long term. It really, I guess from the benefits of it, it could really help for grad school opportunities, getting started on some work that you may continue in grad school if you do decide to stick with that professor and do your graduate studies at Mac, for example. Again, honing in on your research skills, scientific communication, and really testing out whether academic research is something you'd like to pursue in the long run. Yeah, again, close working relationship with a professor and grad student who can really guide you through your future and give you some career opportunities, or honestly, just how Jonathan said, like the networking aspect can really take you a long way. But yeah, I think that's pretty much what a thesis is, and it does have a lot of different benefits, and it's really up to you to see if you want to do it. It's not something mandatory, which every program says you have to do to complete your undergraduate degree. It's really up to you to see if something in academia and research is something you want to continue.
Amazing answers. Okay, and the next question is, what is a TA? Specifically, what is their role, and what courses or classes do you find them in? And we'll start with Julia.
Yeah, so this is a great question because obviously there are no TAs in high school. So TA stands for teaching assistant. So their role kind of varies depending on the course. You'll probably see them in every first year course that you have, just because those courses tend to be decently large. So their job is just to assist the prof. Again, depending on the course, they could either be responsible for running labs or possibly, oh, I think I'm freezing. They could either be responsible for running labs or for running tutorials. They also help a lot with marking and stuff, but they can be another point of contact for you to ask questions if you ever need advice or like John said earlier, mentorship. They're really great for that. And sometimes it's just a little bit less intimidating to talk to the TAs instead of a prof because they're usually a lot closer in age to you. They're usually undergrads or graduate students.
Just to add on to that, what Julia was saying, another, other than just seeing TAs in like tutorials for specific courses, there are also opportunities such as like the Math Help Center. If you're taking any math courses, which you probably will in first year, the Math Help Center, there's like a Physics Help Center, and it's just a place you can go and get help with any of your questions from like a general TA that can like answer your questions for that. And I feel like a lot of people don't really know about the Math Help Center, especially this year. It might still be online in the fall. But yeah, I just wanted to plug the Math Help Center because, you know.
Perfect. And now we'll move on to our next kind of section of questions, which is related to study strategies and learning skills. And the first question is, what are some tips to help you to balance all the work you get from different courses? And we'll start with Jonathan.
Yeah, so I live and die by like my Google Calendar or now my Outlook calendar. Like if something's not in there, like I'm not gonna do it. So all my assignments, all my classes, all my tutorials, they all go in there. And that way, like it keeps me like really organized. So I know like, oh, for example, I have an assignment due in 1 week, I better start. Or like, oh shoot, I forgot about this like assignment that's due tomorrow. I better like stay up all night to do it or something. So essentially that's how I work. Google Calendar is my best friend, or now it's like the Outlook app. But I guess one thing I want to say, it's also important to schedule like free time and like your own time. Like university gets busy like really, really quickly. Like you have so many classes, so many tutorials, so many like assignments and whatnot. And then you have on top of that like your extracurricular commitment. So it's really easy to get caught down and like bogged down by all of the different sort of things you're involved in. So scheduling, like for example, Friday nights, like you're going out to like have dinner with friends, or like Sunday in the morning you're gonna have brunch with like your parents. Like those are all like really important things to help keep you going. And even though it may take away from some of your work time, like in the long run, I think it really helps to keep you like sane and like motivated in terms of like getting your work done and making sure that like you're putting your best effort into all of your tests and assignments, etc. So that's my advice.
Yeah, I agree with everything Jonathan said. Really, I think it's important to once again mention that, like you talked about Outlook Calendar, the more you can get into the habit of like doing the same things every day, like setting aside time to work on this class, setting aside time to work on your other class, the more you can do that every day, the better you'll feel your learning goes in university, as opposed to like only doing the assignment that shows up on Avenue, like on the day of. So it's helpful to like do a little bit every day as opposed to kind of just leave it all for the day that you see that big 11:59 due date on your screen. And that happens through staying organized, which he did a great job of explaining. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to add something really quickly. It's okay if you don't get all like your scheduled work done in like a day. Like there's a lot of times where like I schedule like too much work and like you realize you can't finish it. Like you don't have to like kill yourself over like, oh, I didn't complete my entire checklist today. Like things happen, life happens. So yeah, keep that in mind and keep like your goals realistic as you work through day-to-day tasks and make sure like you're not burnt out by the end of the day.
Perfect. Completely agree with what John just said. I definitely overschedule myself because I don't think things take as long as they do. And so then our next question is, what advice do you have on managing your time and having a balanced school lifestyle? We'll start with Samira.
Yeah, kind of like how Jonathan said, like my calendar just has like everything in there. So if I don't have my calendar, like I feel like a part of me is missing. It's just something I've learned because in high school I never used to really use a calendar. I just kind of like I'd make mental notes, but I realized mental notes really don't work anymore for me. So actually sitting down, like I usually on like Sunday night, I'll schedule my week and I'll be like, oh, like I have an assignment due on this day, but also I'm going out with friends on another day to really manage, school and life. Because again, you can't just always be sitting in front of your laptop or in a library just studying 24/7. Like you will get burnt out. And I feel like a lot of us have tried to just sit down for a long period of time and just work. It does not work at least for me, I would say. So taking those breaks, is really important. Setting a time in your schedule just to be like, I'm going to take this time to sit and watch a movie with my friends, or I'm going to take this time to go for a walk with my dog. And that's okay because you need that to really just stay sane, like how Jonathan said. I think that was a really good way to put it. At least for me also, I tend to notice that you know, in lectures and some things, my brain will start to wander and I'll start to worry about things that are coming up in terms of deadlines. So really staying focused at the task that you have in front of you. And that really helped me, like, not worry about too much and really just managing my time. Like, okay, I'm going to sit down for 1 hour, listen to this lecture, finish it off, and then I get to do what I need to do next. But yeah, and I think another thing is getting ahead of the game, trying your best not to procrastinate. I feel like all of us here as panelists, we have procrastinated on things. We see that 11:59 due date and we're like, okay, it's go time, 24 hours, just work on it. I would say, you know what, it's a learning curve, and sometimes you need to learn to just, you know, schedule your time ahead and work on it maybe like an hour every day, so you're not, you know, 24 hours before you're not dying before trying to finish everything off. But I think that's a really good way of managing your time, and just, again, scheduling time to just have fun with friends, have fun with family, and just do your own thing to just make sure you get the most out of like your social experience of university and the academic life. And I'll pass it to Jonathan then.
Yeah, no, that was awesome. I totally agree with everything you said, Samira. Just to add on to that really quickly, like, just have fun and like do things that you love. Like, if you aren't doing things you love, then obviously you're gonna have like a miserable time. I remember in first year, like it was miserable because like all I would do was like work and like labs and tutorial, and then like all the classes like sucked, right? So like on top of like school, like doing things you enjoy, like joining a club, meeting new people, watching a movie at home, reading a new book, whatever makes you work and whatever sort of helps you to like settle down at the end of the day, like that's what you want to do. Because even though university is super hectic, it's super busy, like it's also a lot of fun, right? It's supposed to be that way. So on top of all the things that aren't fun, like for example, if there's this one class you really hate, like supplement that with a class or an elective that you do love and you are interested in, right? So yeah, just to add on to Samira, I agree with everything she said, but try as much as you can to do things you enjoy, because time will just fly by if you love what you're doing.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with what both of you said. One thing I wanted to add was along those lines of there's a lot of learning that happens in university outside of your lecture too. Like life can hit you in a certain week harder than it will than a week after that. So it's important for you to like maintain your life too, which is the other part of the question, like having, you know, your own life opposed from just academically. And so really they did a great job of explaining that, hey, you should schedule time for things that you like to do. You should, John just suggested a great thing that like I like to do if I'm finding a particular course is hard. I like to, you know, supplement it with something that's easier for me or something that, you know, is like a little bit easier for me to understand at the moment. And that really goes a long way, because not only does it let you get a break, it also gives you a feeling of like achievement once you've done well in a course and you're like, hey, even this course that I'm doing bad in, I could do better. Like I'm doing fine in this course. And so really stuff like that, just encouraging yourself and enjoying the process, because at the end of the day, the more you enjoy the studying you do and all that stuff you do, the more you learn about yourself as well, because then you realize that, hey, this is something I like, this is something I don't like, and that's fine. That's what uni is about. And so yeah, as much as you can, try to start to learn your own personality. And the other thing is, someone mentioned that a couple of us as panelists were telling you good habits, but a lot of us have pulled those all-nighters, and it's trial and error. That's why we're here. Like it's not to say that someone next to you has like everything figured out. They probably don't. They might look like it, but everyone goes through like ups and downs in uni, and you really just need to be confident in yourself and make sure you're enjoying it. Like don't put extra stress on yourself more than you need to. Obviously, you want to do well, but you don't need to let it get to a point, or try to control it, I guess, so that it doesn't impact you mentally as much.
Amazing. And we'll move on to the next question, which is, what are some effective ways to study in university? And we'll start with Haley.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think that like it's definitely been like a learning curve, and so like take your time and like be nice to yourself as you're learning, just like how best you study. But some things that I've definitely learned that I found were super helpful were, first off, make use of all the resources available to you. I don't know if that's kind of like a given or not, but things like office hours, emailing your TAs, even asking like upper years for like old practice tests, things like that. Like there is a lot of like collectively, I feel like McMaster upper years have like a lot of knowledge. And so, and always willing to, pass it down. And so just kind of making use of all those resources and, going in and talking to your professors, things like that, those things would really help just in terms of like navigating how the course is structured and therefore how you can best study and maximize your efficient study time. I would also say that you should just like block time out to study. So just like very similar to what everyone else was saying, make very real goals. So if you're working on an assignment, like give yourself questions like 1 to 4 to get through in like a certain amount of time, and then you'll know that you've accomplished a certain amount of things. And so just being very realistic with your time and also very structured, but that's definitely something that comes with practice. But just utilizing things like OneNote. I really liked OneNote, just being able to like see all the slides that all the profs would spend time making, and you don't have to copy them onto your notes, but kind of just like adding on any supplementary material that they're saying in class that might help you understand the material a little bit further than just what's on the paper, and just bringing your knowledge into like the real world. So kind of thinking about it in an application sense, and also just thinking about it in a bigger picture. So like using whiteboards and things like that to understand like the larger scheme of what's going on in your course, and then how each individual subject kind of falls into place. And that's really helped me.
And I guess just to add to that, I agree with everything Haley said, and everybody talked about trial and error. That could not be more true for me. I learn new study techniques basically every week, and I'm going into 3rd year. One thing, I guess the biggest change since high school for me was really more so focusing on active recall. So just constantly testing myself instead of like reading and rewriting things. That's really helped me just study more efficiently. That's kind of been the key for me. When I went into 1st year, my friend an upper year gave me really good advice, and it was study smart, not hard. And I guess that really hit home for me. So just studying really efficiently. I really like group study in certain contexts when I'm confident with the material. So that's something to consider in some areas, maybe not others. And I think someone talked about flowcharts as well. I love making flowcharts and connecting concepts in certain courses. It is really beneficial for all my studying habits.
Perfect. Okay, and so the next question is, how is studying for university different from high school? And we'll start with Julia.
Yeah, so Michaela kind of touched on this in the last question, but for me, like in high school, how I studied was just rereading my notes 1,000 times and like recopying them, and not really, I guess, kind of understanding the material more, but more just memorizing things. And that didn't work for me in university. I found that the tests were so much more application based that I really needed to practice and just really understand the material more. The other thing was in high school, I used to study the night before for everything, and that worked wonders. But then in university, I needed a lot more time to kind of solidify my understanding of things. Kind of some of the, I mean, it depends on the course. Like I'm in physics, so the way I like to study is usually at the end of each unit, I'll try to condense all my notes from that section into one page, so like a cheat sheet, and that way I can really understand like what's important of the unit and what equations are relevant, rather than just like memorizing everything. I find that also helps me keep track of like what's important and what's not, so I can study more effectively. And the other thing I like to do is go through practice problems. So I'll set it up like the week before and just make a kind of a targeted list of what questions I want to do when, and kind of break them up over several days so that I'm continually reinforcing what I've learned, but also practicing solving things like I would see on a test. So a lot of courses will give you like previous year's tests and stuff, and those are a really awesome resource to go through and just see what types of questions they may ask you. So I highly recommend doing that.
Yeah, I totally agree. And like with the last question, like prioritize doing the practice problems, especially in like math, chem, physics courses. Like active, you're gonna learn more if you're actively doing a problem, and if you're practicing in a way that like where you're going to be asked on the test to like do a problem, just reading through your notes or just reading through the textbook is definitely not going to be as effective as doing practice problems. And I was going to say something else, but I forget. Yeah, that's essentially it. Like for me, the shift between studying in high school and university wasn't that different because I had already like established decent study habits, and like in grade 12 like you still have to study on your own, but the main difference was like in university you're just studying a lot more, like so much more of your time is studying. But again, like don't spend all of your time studying, but yeah, definitely do the practice problems and like don't just read the notes or like passively watch lectures to study.
I think everyone made like really good points. I think I guess those are, I feel like for math and like physics courses, that's usually what I would do in terms of like condensing my notes, kind of redoing problems. But when it comes to doing other courses like anatomy, I find it really helpful to kind of visualize it on your own body. And I think that's something that you can't really do with like high school courses. The idea of like kind of visualizing and like using other resources that you would not normally do. Another thing would be, I'm sorry, my cat was biting me, but I think another thing that I found really helpful that I couldn't really do in high school was having my friends constantly quiz me, because that way you know what you don't know what you don't know until someone kind of asks you a question, and then you kind of have the mindset of like, oh, I forgot to study that, or oh, that's something I didn't really realize. And I feel like that's really helpful, especially when you get it wrong and you're like your friends are like kind of like teasing you about it. It makes it stick easier. So I think it's really important just to have like a group of friends that will constantly keep you on track with those things.
Amazing advice. The next question is, what academic resources are available to me if I am struggling? I'll start with Michaela.
Yeah, I think a lot of people touched on it, but my favorites in first year were definitely the Math Help Center and the Chem Help Center. I found these super helpful. The TAs are very welcoming. I didn't feel judged at all, and I grew a lot in those subjects thanks to those help centers. Another resource that I found amazing is the McMaster Science Society tutoring service. That's right. So basically in first year, each session it's open to all science students, but each session is $15 an hour, I think. But first years you get 2 free sessions per semester, I think. Someone can correct me on that. So that's a great resource as well for one-on-one help if you want a session like before a midterm. I found it very helpful.
Yeah, thanks, Michaela, for the shameless plug. I was going to give that, but yes, that's exactly right. So for MSS tutoring, you can sign up through the website, which will hopefully be up and running soon. Where it's down for maintenance right now, but you can sign up on there. You get 2 free sessions per semester, like Michaela said. So definitely a good resource if you want to just try it out or see if it's something that will work for you long term. Another resource I just wanted to add, I know Michaela mentioned the Chem and Math Help Centers. The physics department also has the Physics Health Initiative, or PHI, which ran on Teams this past year. So it's a very similar idea. It's upper year students or TAs there to answer your questions. I know a lot of people really struggle with physics in first year because it's physics. So it's nice to be able to get that extra support, and that is free of charge too.
Perfect. Okay, the next question is, what are some effective strategies to study for tests and exams? And also, how early do you begin studying? And we'll start with Omer.
Okay, so we've touched on this a lot, but making a schedule is where I'll start with things, because I remember in first year, I had the same question, and I was pretty stressed out about like, hey, I have this midterm coming out. It was for, I think, bio and MO3 or something, and I'm like, dude, there's a lot of stuff to go through. So I asked one of my welcome week reps, who I was still in contact with, I'm like, hey, like, what should I do? And they gave me kind of great advice, which we've actually kind of discussed in the last question too. But basically, make it a process. Obviously, sometimes life hits. You have to pull that one all-nighter, and hopefully you do well. My prayers are with you. But if you have time, what I would suggest is really reviewing your notes weekly. So once you hear that, hey, okay, the midterm's in 2 weeks, start reviewing your lectures. You know, like as opposed to just taking the notes for the lecture and never looking at it until you need to, start looking at it. So maybe you'll take notes and then you'll review it on Saturday of that week, and you'll be like, hey, this week we learned this, this, and this. And what happens with that is you're dividing up the content that you'll be tested on and making associations about, hey, this stuff was covered in this week. And it helps because it builds a habit of when you're answering questions on the test, you see a pattern of like, hey, this was from this week, this was from that week, this is going to be like, this is what I need to review here. And so definitely that comes from reviewing notes weekly. And then someone also mentioned scheduling practice, like practice examples. A lot of midterms in first year, the questions are application based, but a lot of good practice comes from the textbooks and from those resources that they post. It's not like you'll see a question and be like, this was nowhere to be. Okay, actually, maybe one or two, maybe one or two. You'll be like, this was nowhere to be found. But the majority of questions you can practice for a little bit, and sometimes you're even comfortable to the extent where like, I've done this question, it's just different numbers or stuff like that. And so that happened with me a lot in my year, where I found a lot of the questions, my prof was literally just trying to see who was putting in the work, doing the practice examples, and you get rewarded based off the effort that you put in. It's not like you can study really, really hard and so obviously sometimes you might get a bad mark, but most of the times you do get rewarded for the amount of work that you put in. And that comes from the fact that you're practicing those tests, those examples. And so really schedule some time to do those practice tests and work through it. See where you went wrong maybe before the test comes, instead of just doing the practice test and being okay with, okay, I got this mark. Look at the questions you got wrong. See where you went wrong. And that's a good way to kind of be ready. As far as how early you begin studying for the tests and exams, that's really up to you. I can't give you a certain date that like you should, for every exam you'll ever face, study this far ahead. What I can suggest though is obviously try not to make it less than 24 hours, and also, you know, have like, I'd say the ideal amount for me is like a week, 2 weeks in between there. Obviously it's hard to start studying a month ahead like we did in high school. You know, you'd know your final exams are coming up. You'd be like, okay, I can theoretically just study everything I need to right now and be ready. And a lot of that worked for us back then, but in uni it's a little different. So that's what I would suggest.
Oh, I think it's me now. Yeah, so 100%, like the one thing, especially for like math and physics, is like practice problems are so important. And I think like if you're studying for like test or exam, unless you're like really, really lost on the content, like the best use of your time is just to do as many practice problems as you can. Just like Omer said, like often the test questions will be really similar. So it'll just be a breeze. And then another thing, in terms of like practice tests, like you can do practice questions from the textbook, but then often like you'll get a practice test from the prof that will like generally like be pretty similar to the real test, like not always, but and I like to it may not be for everyone, but I find it really good to like kind of like save that until like I've done a bit of studying, and then like you really want to like, you can kind of simulate a test environment and then write the practice test. So like, don't look at your notes, time yourself, or like set a timer for how long the practice test is, and like sit down and do it. Because often like people will come out of tests and be like, oh, that was like nothing like the practice questions, but it's like, okay, well, like you did the practice questions like with your notes open, taking as much time as you wanted, you know? So like, if you want to really be prepared, then simulate those. And even for the other practice questions, if you can do them without looking at your notes, you definitely should. And then as for time, like how long you should study ahead, kind of agree with Omer, like it's up to you, how like ready you think you are. Like generally, ideally, you're kind of like always doing, like you're always doing practice problems. Like often after a class, a prof will be like, okay, like for this section, like you can do these problems from the textbook. So like ideally, like you would do those like immediately, and then you kind of don't really like have to like study too hard. Like you're kind of spacing out your studying throughout the year, so you know how to do like these type of problems, you know how to do these type, and then like I don't know, like before the exam, you just start doing more practice problems. But yeah.
Amazing. Okay, so the next question. Oh, Christian, do you want to add on to something?
Yeah, just it's not like directly, but for people taking chemistry, like 1A03, I think that's one of the first exams that usually comes up in first year. And that one, you got to study a little bit differently because it can be hard, but it doesn't have to be if you understand your high school chemistry really well. So one other place to go and find practice would be to go back to your high school if there's any concept that you don't understand and review from there, because they don't spend so much time reviewing it, but that stuff does come up on the test. So just keep that in mind.
Thank you for adding that. The next question we have is, how do you take notes? Which method of taking notes works best? And we'll start with Haley.
So first off, I would just like say that for like lots of different courses, it's like you can probably see the methods for studying are very different. And so like make sure to kind of adapt to those and to see which courses need like what type of learning and what type of studying, and just like go forward in that way. So yeah, studying smarter. But I think for me, for certain courses that were a little bit more interactive in terms of like processes and pathways and things like that. So I guess that would be a bit more bio courses or any like neuro pathways or things like that. Kind of printing out any of the slides and then making notes in the margins, highlighting processes, pathways, adding your own little like notes on the side to the diagrams that have been given to you by the professors. And so that way you're just familiarizing yourself with their own material, which is probably more testable than any other like outside resource that you could find. I also draw a lot of pathways. I'm a terrible artist, but like I think just like the concept of like making sure you're going through every single step and the little like enzymes, the little catalysts, like you want to make sure that you're getting those and you're knowing exactly where they are. And I just think that it comes off better if you're drawing them out instead of just like passively looking at them in a nice diagram. Also, I do make summary sheets, so I know some people have said that. So making like cheat sheets, just little like keywords that you're going to want to remember, especially in longer answer questions when you need to have like certain keywords in order to get the marks, just making sure that those are condensed and that you're really studying from those. But yeah, it's really just, there's a lot of different methods, and depending on the course and depending on the material itself, it'll be different. And so just kind of be open to adapting to it. And if all your notes aren't like in one specific place, like that's okay. And just kind of being able to take their material and yeah, really work it in your own way.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything Haley just said. For me, for courses like chemistry, biology, anything where they give the slides to you, I think it's best for me to just have them in front of me and make my little margins. In first year, I would just print out the slides, but in second year with virtual school, I decided to invest in an iPad. I think it's life-changing, but you definitely don't need one. And then for that, I use OneNote, which I think is a great resource. I use OneNote for all of my note taking, and you don't have to pay for it. It's free with your McMaster account, which is great. There's other note-taking apps that I think you have to pay for that people also find really useful, but OneNote for me is perfect. I said before, flowcharts are really helpful, not during the lecture, but at the end of each unit, just mapping out all the concepts. Yeah, I don't have anything else to add.
Awesome. Yeah, I agree with everything that was said. But I definitely think that a lot of kids, they're not sure, like, okay, I have to memorize every detail. I just want to reinforce that, like, you try to study in a way that you understand the concepts. So for me, that was like getting a whiteboard. And so sometimes it could be as simple as like explaining a concept to myself using the whiteboard. I found that I learned more that way. So I like that's another approach you could take. You'll also find that you're sometimes combining a bunch of techniques to study, which is great. It's not bad to do more. It's obviously more beneficial if anything. But at the same time, don't be afraid to try stuff out. So I remember in first year, I was all about taking notes and like, getting down every word that my professor said. And then a lot of people were like that. You'd always hear clicking in the lecture hall, like, and then it got to a point where I was like, I am not understanding what he's saying. I'm just writing it. And so after that, like I learned that didn't work for me. And so I started taking a step back and I'm like, okay, let me listen to this prof talk, and then I'll write down concepts that maybe I need to review for sure. Or maybe I'll write down the most important things that he said, as opposed to just like, taking down everything that he said. And so the way that worked for me, I think, was very helpful because I was taking less notes, but I was understanding more of what I was doing. And then, like I said, from there, learning, like if you need a whiteboard on like at the end of the week to just explain a concept you learned in a certain class, and then you could do that. But yeah, I definitely agree with what was said. I think those are all great suggestions, and definitely download OneNote if you haven't.
Okay, so that wraps up our section on study strategies and learning skills. And we're going to move on to questions about approaching professors and or TAs. And the first question we have is, how do I approach professors when I have questions about course content? And we'll start with Omar again.
Awesome. So obviously things were a little bit different with the online setting, and they're going to continue to be different this fall for many of us who have some hybrid courses. But I guess I'll talk about how it was like briefly in person. So in person, it's a little different because you can actually approach your professor and ask them questions. So the way that worked was usually professors will have a little bit of time after class or before class. Some professors show up early and you can, ask them questions about course content then. A lot of people will stay after class, so the line gets a little bit long, but definitely the prof stays around sometimes to answer questions then as well. What I would suggest, which a lot of people have mentioned, is office hours. It's probably the best way to get your course content questions answered effectively. Most times professors will be in a rush to get to their next class, and there's like a 10-minute period where they have to like answer a couple questions, run to their next class, get started at the next class. So they kind of rush their answers. But if you really want a satisfactory explanation about something, I would say go to their office hours, and usually like there's literally usually one or two people there. Other than that, like it's no rush as much as it is in lectures. So you can take all the time you need, and they're super nice, and they usually do a great job of answering your questions. Online, there's a similar like setup. You can't actually go approach them, but after class and before class, they stay along a little while and do the same thing. But yeah, online, I would just suggest going to their office hours, emailing them. And another thing that goes with emails is respecting their rules for emailing. A lot of professors are super strict about like, hey, if you don't give me this information about you, I don't know who you are. So I don't know what you could be talking about. I don't know what this question's about. So often they'll be like, write your name, student number, and like the class you're taking, because some professors teach more than one class. So make sure you respect those rules that they have if you want to get your questions answered quickly, because most professors will respond pretty quick. Some will still respond even if you don't include all the details they need, but it takes a little while longer. So I would suggest that if you want to get your questions answered about course content the fastest, office hours is your best way to go.
There's not really much that I have to say that Omer didn't say. Like office hours are great. And like professors, like they like when you come to office hours. Like don't it's not like, don't think that it's like annoying for them. Like they often like want people to come. I know profs are like, oh, like no one comes to my office hours. Like, well, everyone come. Like they like when you ask questions. Like, yeah, just like don't be like intimidated or anything. Be respectful, obviously. But you know, like they're there to teach you. Like ask them questions. Yeah, after class, office hours. Yeah, I don't know, just exactly what Omer said.
Okay, and the next question is, how do I make meaningful connections with my professors and TAs?
Yeah, so for this question, like I would say to make meaningful connections, like you need to have like meaningful conversations sometimes, and like asking them about their research, or like just speaking to them about course content, actually showing like that you're interested. They'll like remember you and be like, oh yes, this person came to my office hours and they asked such great questions, and then from there you're able to like establish that professional relationship, which can maybe like help you get like a research position or something like that in the future. Because honestly, profs, even TAs, they want to see you succeed. They want to help you. And I know, at least for me in my first year, like I was so scared to go to a prof's office hour that I literally wrote a script out about what I should be saying. And like honestly, you don't need to be that scared, because they, again, I think Omar said this, they have like, most of them have like an open door policy. Like you can come and ask them questions, and sometimes, yeah, they literally get sad if people don't come into their office hours because they're taking that time out to answer your questions and to help you. So don't be afraid to, you know, if you think a question is like dumb, even like they will help you and they will answer it for you. I think even maybe if they have an opportunity to volunteer in a lab to show like you're interested and like you want to make that connection with them, that can help you, you know, again, secure that upper year thesis, or like getting a research practicum position. Like that is like, I think the best way to really make those connections. And I guess for TAs as well, like they'll usually be there during your tutorials, helping you out. So usually they also stay after a class or after a tutorial session to answer your questions. And usually, at least for me in my labs and stuff for kin, I had a lot of questions all the time. So I was just always emailing them, asking them different things about how I can, you know, set myself up for success. And they, as grad students, usually they'll give a lot of advice from what they have learned from their undergrad years on how to make meaningful connections with the prof they're with and how they're studying with them. So I think that's like the best way to go about it.
I agree with that a lot. You definitely have to have meaningful conversations with your professors and TAs if you want to make connections with them. So a lot of the time, or pretty much all of the time, that means talking with them outside of class hours, because if you're just in their class or in their lab, they're almost definitely not going to remember you, especially in first year where the numbers of students in their classes are pretty large. So definitely office hours is a good way to speak to professors, asking lots of questions in your labs and tutorials to your TAs. I also took pretty much any opportunity I could to speak to professors outside of class hours, in terms of like events that departments would run to meet your professors in like the upper years. Like these are the professors in your department, so they'll host like little socials to interact with those professors outside of like the classroom setting. And then another way that I kind of made connections with professors is a lot of the times for events in upper years, where they're hosting like informational events for the first years who are going into second year, or high school students who are going into university. They'll recruit students to speak at those events alongside the professors. And I would volunteer for all of those I could, so that I could talk to professors like one-on-one as well. And I found that was kind of how a lot of them would get to know me by name, or like know me on a more personal level.
Just want to add something about online learning, because I know a lot of our courses this fall will still be online. This past year with online school, I feel like I didn't make any connections with like my profs, honestly, and I think that's mainly because I didn't turn my camera on in lecture at all. And like there were some classes where there were like 5 or 6 people who would have their cameras on, and I could see that they were making more connections. They were participating in class, unmuting their mics and stuff. And like the reality is the prof is not going to know you if you're only just like a name in the Teams meeting, right? So something I'm trying to do this year is to like turn my camera on in lectures, and even if I'm like one of the only people, like it will be worth it. Let's normalize having videos on in lectures, guys. We can do it. Yeah, so that's what I would suggest. I'm also trying to tell myself, like, Jesse, just put your camera on and participate, because yeah, it's really hard with an online setting. Like you can't just walk up to them. So yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything that's been said. And so we're going to move on to our next kind of section of questions, which is about research and extracurriculars. And the first question we have is, what research opportunities are available to first-year students? And we're going to start with Christian.
Okay, so there's a few, I don't know whether to call them clubs or basically like student-run organizations that work with professors for research in a certain area that take first years, so you can always apply to them. I'm not sure of the names off the top of my head, but you can definitely find them on social media. But I also know that most of the professors that I've talked to actually like to be approached by first year students about research opportunities, because they like to have somebody from first year, like all the way until they graduate, maybe do a master's or something with them, because a professor's kind of investing in you when they train you in their lab, or they kind of like help you. So the longer you can be there, the better it is for them. So yeah, so don't be afraid. The worst that they can say is no if you contact them. The best they can say is, yeah, come, hang out. Maybe it's volunteer, maybe you get credit for it, who knows. But yeah, definitely professors are a great opportunity, and yeah, those clubs.
Completely agree with what Kristen said. I just want to reiterate, like, a lot of times professors don't really post like research opportunities for first year publicly, because like Kristen said, they want someone that is invested in the research, that is actually genuinely interested, rather than like someone who just sees a job position or like a volunteer position and just applies for the sake of it, right? So then if they like make it available, then they have a lot more general people applying rather than like people who are specifically looking into like their lab. So definitely reach out. Like the worst they can say is no, or like never respond to you ever again, both of which aren't like super bad things, I guess, objectively. So definitely reach out if you are interested in like a professor's research in first year, or even like if you're just looking through departments and you just see a professor who you've never met, but like you like the research a lot, like reach out, right? Also, another place is this, I think it's called like the student work center, the student work program, student work portal or something, and that's on Mosaic. You can apply for it, I think, sometime in September, and once again in January. There's like a fall and winter version, and sometimes they do post like research assistant positions or lab assistant positions. If you're interested, that's another place that you can look. But I would recommend definitely looking into professors and finding someone whose interest or research really interests you and reaching out to them.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add.
Okay, so then I guess we'll just move on to the next question, which is, what is the process of finding research positions with professors? And we'll start with Samira.
Yeah, I guess from my experience is literally just asking and showing your passion and showing your interest. Like, again, I think someone just mentioned this. The worst they can do is say no to like your face, or if you're asking like over an email, they might just like not respond, or they'll just say like politely no. And that's okay. You know, you may be reaching out to like 5, 10, 15 different professors, and you may only get like 1 or 2 responses, but that's sometimes just how it goes. Sometimes, I guess in kin especially, they might give priority to upper years who are doing like a thesis or a research practicum, but see if there's a way for you to volunteer in the lab as like a first year, because that will show your dedication and commitment to them if you do continue in that lab, and that will help you in the future for getting your research practicum or getting your thesis secured. I know sometimes there are applications, so you may have to, at least for kinesiology, you may have to find that on the kin department website under the particular prof, and usually those get released in September and January because they do it based on like the semester, but always keep looking at it, always email. Sometimes, the Kin Society, they set up research undergrad research nights. We're actually able to speak to grad students and profs about if they are looking for research students or if they are looking for a volunteer. That is like a good way of finding those research positions as well. But yeah, I think the biggest thing to take away is just asking and just showing your interest and your passion, because then again, they will see that you're actually interested in them. You're not just trying to put this on your resume or CV, you know, like actually showing that you want to be a part of their lab and that you have something good to contribute to it. You're more likely to find that research position that way.
Yeah, that was great. Again, like totally agree with all those points. I think Samir did a great job outlining sort of the process. Very similar process to me as well. I sent a lot of cold emails. You kind of just shoot them into the void and pray someone replies to you. Like I sent like 30, heard back from like 4. You know, it's just how it is. Also, don't be afraid to like follow up, because like I know my professors, like, yeah, I get like hundreds of emails a day. So like if they miss it, it's not because they don't want to reply to you. It's because like they literally have so many things to get back to. Yours just kind of just falls under like this huge pile that they're always trying to like catch up on, right? So keep emailing. Don't be discouraged if they don't reply, and if they reject you, like that's okay, because there's so many others who will be willing to take you as well. And then I guess once you get that interview, like you want to show your interest in the lab itself. So maybe talking to some of the grad students if you have the opportunity beforehand, or like reading like a paper or some abstracts of what they do or what they've recently published, or you're up to date as to like the idea or general scope of sort of where their research like direction is headed. And then just showing like being honest with like your plans. Like for example, if you want to go to med school after, like don't say you want to go to grad school. Like don't lie to them, because like they'll probably be able to tell, and like that's not going to help you in the long run. So like profs are generally very open to like supporting you in whatever future career you choose to go into. So you don't have to feel like you have to hide anything from them in order to get like a certain research position, even if your end goal isn't like grad school with them, for example.
Yeah, all great. Just in case anybody's curious about like how to find professors, you can look up, like if you type a name and McMaster into Google, you'll find their contact information, like their email, maybe like their research interests. So in case you didn't know, it's all like online. Most labs have websites that post things about what they're doing. Recent publications will be on there. Sometimes they have a page on who's in the lab, and that would bring me to the next thing. You can connect with people that are in the lab, like students and like undergrads, PhD students, masters, doesn't matter. And then they can kind of talk to the professor and like facilitate those connections as well. And the way I found my research, like my thesis position, was I had a TA in a second year lab course, and we just became kind of close. Like we started just talking, and she was like, yeah, there's lots of space in this lab. And it turns out the lab didn't have a website. It wasn't posted anywhere, but the professor had a lab. So she was like, okay, yeah, just email the guy. And turns out he was like, yeah, we're full, but I talked to, I won't tell the name, but I talked to her, and yeah, she says you're a good student. You want to come? Like we can find something for you to do. And that was after I had sent my, maybe 10 cold emails and gotten no responses. So TAs are a great resource. People in the lab are a great resource. And about the prioritizing for upper year students, most like upper years that are looking for thesis placements are like recommended to apply in like October. So if you apply in like end of December, January, most of the upper year students, like most of the spaces they've been saving for them will be filled. So you'll get an idea of like if people are open if you email like then, as opposed to emailing like so early. Yeah, and that's pretty much all I have to say. So yeah, connect with your TAs. That's the main thing.
All great advice. I think I learned something too. And the next question we have is to our panelists. Are any of you involved in research? Do you have any tips? And we'll start with Haley.
Okay, yeah. So I'm very interested in research. I'm currently working at Sick Kids in the pediatric surgery department, and I'm doing my honors thesis at Hamilton Health Sciences in the chronic pain program. And so I would say that the first and most important thing, as everyone has already said, is just kind of like finding things that you're interested in. And as a first year, you might not know what that is, and that's completely okay. And so just like as you're taking your courses and as you're kind of learning more so at the university level, at a little bit more specialized level, just kind of taking courses that you are interested in, and then, you know, facilitating those connections with the professors and emailing them like, hey, I'm a student in this class. I did pretty well. I was just wondering if you had any chances to like talk about your work or any opportunities that you might have in your lab. And that would be like a great kind of segue to show that you were interested in it and taking initiative to kind of further your own education before you kind of jumped in headfirst into actual research. But if you're into more of like the clinical side of research, which is what I was very interested in, I actually learned quite a bit. And so first of all, reaching out to like partnering organizations. So for example, when I was emailing for sick kids, I knew that U of T partnered with them and it was a teaching hospital. So I went through the U of T faculty of medicine, like professors, because those are the ones who are doing research. Those are the ones that, you know, have like things going on in certain times, like doctors won't take people because they literally have nothing to, like, they have nothing going on. But with these profs, you know that like they're working on something. And so that's a great way to kind of email them. And then it's through like their U of T emails or their, you know, they're like St. Joe's or Hamilton Health Sciences emails for anyone at Mac. And so like it's a little bit easier to get through there than like through their McMaster email, where I'm sure they get a lot of just like course questions and things like that. What else? Oh, third, this, I don't know if this is kind of sneaky, but like to kind of answer John's like thing about not being able to like see if they've emailed you. So there's this app called MailTrack, and you can track if a professor has opened your email. So I don't know if that's like, yeah, this is the MSS runabout. I don't know if this is fair, but you can download it and it's an extension off of your Gmail. I actually don't know if it works on the Outlook, but you can just like, yeah, you like send it along with your email, and then you can see like if they've opened it, how many times they've opened it, and if they've like forwarded it or anything like that. So if you actually like, if this professor hasn't opened your email, like then you send like multiple follow-ups until like, you know, they do open it. But like, let's say like they open it and they read it, and then you follow up and they open it and they read it and they don't reply, move on a little bit, you know what I mean? Like they might not have space, they might not have the time to answer. So that's one thing I learned. Also within like the emails that you're sending, when you're cold emailing, like nobody really knows what that is, but just kind of, you know, introduce yourself, introduce your future goals, introduce exactly what you're looking for. So research assistant, summer paid position, summer volunteer position, things like that, research practicum, things like that. Like make it very clear what you're looking for, as well as any like passion. So any courses that you've taken, any way that you can supplement that you've taken initiative in that kind of aspect of whatever they're doing research in, as well as sending along your resume and your CV, your resume and your unofficial transcript. If you have it, if not, that's okay. But just like a lot of times it's annoying for profs to have to chase you down and like ask, oh, like, you know what, I need this, I need this, I need this. So just send it all to them like in one go. So it makes it very easy for them to see, you know, kind of who you are. But yeah, don't get discouraged. It's really hard, and Mac is very research intensive. So there's a lot of things that, you know, is happening, and there's a lot of upper years who are also very interested, and like sometimes they do take precedence, sometimes they don't. But yeah, emailing like grad students, undergrads, like just getting a feel for the lab itself, doing things that, you know, you're interested in. Like I found COVID research to be very, very cool, so I emailed around and stuff like that. So just like kind of proving why you're interested in things like that, and, you know, learning from upper years. So it's great that you guys are all here and trying to learn and get as much information as possible before you start Mac. But yeah, there's a lot of MSS workshops for research. I'm running the Research 1A03 one sometime soon, so everyone should come out to that. But yeah, I think that was long, but that was what I have to offer.
I agree with a lot of the stuff Haley said. I have research experience on like under a professor at McMaster, so not on like the kind of medical placement kind of side, but more like within McMaster. A lot of the stuff that she said is the same, where in your cold emails definitely include like resume or CV, transcript, the classes that you've taken that are relevant, why you're interested in their research, and then included in that, if possible, try and show that you've read some of their papers. I know that when I was looking into finding a research position and doing cold emails, I would read their papers and not fully understand what they were talking about because I was like a second-year student, and these papers were for like postdoc, PhD level papers. And even when I spoke to professors after that, they were like really understanding if I didn't understand everything within their paper. They know that you're an undergraduate student, so you don't need to understand it all to show that you're interested in it. Another thing is that if you reach out to a professor in first year or second year and you don't get a response from them, don't be afraid to like try again when you're going into third year or fourth year, because a lot of, like, I think Samira said that a lot of professors prioritize taking upper year students, which I found the case to be in my lab a little bit. But yeah, don't be afraid to reach out to them again if you have before, because a lot of the time they don't take you because they don't have the money or the space in the lab, and not because they don't want to take you. They would if they could, which is another thing. Don't be like discouraged if you can't find a paid position. You have to go for a volunteer position. Kind of along with that, look into if your program offers courses where you can work under a professor. A lot of programs offer research placement courses or internship courses where you can have the opportunity to work under a professor for course credit, which is actually how I got into the lab that I'm working in. I was doing an internship course and needed like a supervisor for that. And I got that position going into third year for the internship course. And my final research tip, I guess, is don't be afraid to look for professors whose research you're interested in, who are in a different department or even a different faculty altogether. My lab is in the School of Earth, Environment, and Society, and I'm the only undergraduate student who's actually in that department. We have ISci students, we have life sci students, and it's just me from the actual faculty. One of my best friends is a psychology, neuroscience, and behavior student, and she actually works in a commerce lab. So like if there's professors who kind of fit your research interests, you can talk about the courses you've taken that are relevant. You can talk about like why you want to continue doing research that they're doing, then just email them even if they're not in your department.
Yeah, I don't have too much to add. I think Haley and Rachel really gave an all-encompassing set of information. So my research involvement is slightly different, I guess, than the two of them. So I did work in a lab at Mac last summer, but this term, I guess, I'm on co-op. I've been on co-op for 8 months. So I actually work in a physics lab in Sudbury, Ontario, called Snow Lab. So it's its own institution. It's not affiliated with the university or anything, but they do a lot of collaborative projects. So I guess a little bit on that, like I know people have said it before with the cold emails. When I applied to work at Snow Lab, I just needed a job to fulfill my co-op requirements. They had no postings on their site, so I just sort of like found an email on the website and then just emailed and said like, hey, I'm really interested in your work. Like I think the projects are really cool. Like, do you have openings for students? And they responded and basically said like, send in your resume and transcript. And then I got an interview and that was great. But sometimes like, even if there's no postings, you can still apply or like stuff like that. And one of the things my supervisor told me is that you stand out more if you do that, because it's really easy to just click apply to a posting of a research position somewhere, but it shows a lot more your interest and your passion if you email in when there's like nothing posted. And I guess I want to like reiterate that you shouldn't feel too discouraged by like not getting a lot of responses. I know it's really tempting. We've been there, but it's just sometimes, as people said, profs are really busy or they don't have openings, and it's just, yeah, things happen. One last thing I wanted to add, Samira talked about this earlier, and I think John did too, but like, I think it's really important if you're looking for research under a prof at McMaster to like make those connections. In my experience, and I guess the experience of my friends as well, if you have made an effort to like talk to the prof or go to office hours, they're much more willing to accommodate you and like take you on as a student than if you've like never spoken to them in your life. So yeah, just try to establish those connections beforehand. And I think also the last thing I wanted to say was that in first year, I really was so confused why people were interested in research at all. Like it just didn't appeal to me. I thought I would find it so boring. But I actually like last summer, I was like, okay, no, like I don't know what I want to do like long term in terms of career goals. So I thought it would be like kind of cool to try it out. I ended up really liking it. So I think that like even if maybe you're not feeling it right away, just testing it out. Like, I mean, sometimes you could volunteer through the school year or even just get a 4-month thing. You can always like not continue with it later, like after your term is up, and pick a different job the next time. Like it's not the end of the world, but I think if you're a little bit confused about careers, like don't like rule out research because you think you don't like it. That's my advice.
Great advice all around. We're going to move more into like the extracurricular side of things. And the first question is, what extracurricular activities and opportunities are available at MAC, and how do we find out about them? And we'll start with Samira.
Yeah, so in terms of, I guess, like extracurriculars, in terms of clubs and stuff, MAC usually in like, I believe like the first month in like September, they have something called Clubs Fest. So that usually it's over the span of 2 days. One is in person, it's over 2 days. And it's literally all the MSU clubs on campus are able to show like who they are, if they're looking for new members, which they always are, and how to kind of get involved, whether that be like an application or you can just become a general member and then, you know, get to an exec position that way. And they literally have like cultural clubs and academic clubs and social justice and issues clubs and recreational clubs. So it's literally any and every club you can possibly think of. I'm pretty sure MAC has it. And I really feel like, at least when I was in first year, like it's on like the field, I believe it's the BSB field where it's like booths of every single club. And I really felt like there was a club for everyone or something that you resonated with really like a lot. You found something there for you and you really fit in with it. And sometimes you can continue it from your first year to your fourth year. In terms of it being online, I know the MSU Club's Instagram page and like their Facebook page was also doing it. They're doing it by week this time. So in September, 1 week was specifically for like the academic clubs, and then 1 week is for like the religious and cultural clubs. So there's stuff like that. I guess another thing I can talk about because of I'm in kin is intramurals. Gotta plug it. So you can literally Google like McMaster Athletics and Recreation, and on their website you can find out like different intramurals. I know for this past year it was obviously not there, but like fingers crossed this year they're gonna bring it back. Hopefully in like the winter or even the fall. I know they're looking at that from like DBAC and like the gym and everything. So that is a good way if you're into sports, if you're into stuff like that. You can look at intramurals. It's really fun. I was not that great. I tried it out, played soccer for a bit. It was just fun. You know, it's just a way to let off some steam, meet some fun people, and like you can make friends that way too. And it's just a really great way to get involved if you're into sports and stuff.
Yeah, no, I also loved intramurals. So like, you know, like if you win, like I think if you win like the tournaments or whatever, you can get like a little like T-shirt, which is like really sick. So like, I always work for the T-shirts. You know, it's free stuff. Gotta grab the free loot. But yeah, sort of adding to what Samira said, like literally anything you want to get involved in, like a club at MAC or like some society will offer it somehow. Whether it be like you want to volunteer at a hospital, you want to like intern at like a law firm, or you want to like learn how to debate better, or you want to learn more about like ethical or like environmental or sustainable clubs, like literally anything you want to do, like a club at MAC probably already has it started, and if it doesn't, then you can always start one yourself, right? So that's also an option. If you see everything at MAC, you're like, I don't want to do this, I want to like do something on my own, then yeah, like you can start your own club. I guess for me, since I'm part of the MSS, like I gotta shamelessly plug that like first year recollections are coming up in like September. So if you're interested in like being a part of like the MSS or like Kin Society or whatever, first year recollections usually happen first month of September. So that's also a great way to get involved, and it's a great way to like network and meet upper years and like learn about sort of how program societies work as well. So yeah, but really nothing much to add on top of what Samira said. Like whatever you want to do, like MAC probably has some sort of club that's advertised like during the Clubs Fest that happens during September.
Sorry, gonna add something really quick. If you are looking into making your own club that's not in the MSU clubs directory, they usually accept applications in September. They used to do it in September and then January, but from what I know, this past year they changed it to you can only apply, I believe, in September if you want to make a new club. So keep that in mind. Also, I'm gonna add a little bit of a shameless plug here since I'm the president of Kin Society. So first year recollections, if there are any first year kin students here, that is also coming up in September. So check out our Instagram page or our Facebook page or even our website on how to get involved in that. Thanks, Jonathan, for reminding me about that.
I love all the shameless promo. Next question is, what clubs did you get involved in during your first year? And we'll start with Rachel.
Yeah, so I didn't really know about a lot of the clubs at Mac before I got there, and then I went to Clubs Fest, which is like the event that the people before me described, and I wanted to sign up for literally everything, and I didn't know how I would manage my time and like be a member or an executive for all of these clubs. But one of the clubs that I joined that I kind of continued with throughout my time at Mac is McMaster Arts for Children, and that's the only kind of club that I'm part of that has, or that I was part of at the time, that had meetings where you had to go every time at the same week to like volunteer with children at the McMaster Children's Hospital or schools around the city, making crafts and like doing programming with them. But most of the clubs at Mac actually have like events where you can just kind of drop in, especially like the more social clubs at Mac, where you can just drop in and participate in their events weekly if you have the time for it, which I found to be really helpful. They'll like get your email for an email list, or you follow them on Facebook or Instagram and they'll post when they have meetings and you just go to them. Some of the ones that I joined that were kind of on that format were the Model United Nations, Artists at Mac, McMaster Sports Analysis, which hosted like a viewing party for sports games, which was pretty cool. I'm sad that they can't really do that when it's online, but yeah, so I joined a bunch of stuff where I could kind of join on my own time when it worked for me, and I found that to be really helpful in time management and joining clubs and all of that fun stuff.
Yeah, so for me, I have to mention intramurals again. It was one of the best parts of my first year. I played volleyball, but they have everything from basketball to inner tube water polo. So I found that very cool. And they also have 2 different leagues. One's a little less competitive and still really fun. And one's a little bit more competitive. So whichever one you choose. Another club that I really enjoyed in first year was the Residence Running Club. So anybody staying on Residence, it was like twice a week, and we just ran around Westdale, and it was really fun as well. Another club that I really enjoyed since my first year was McMaster Community Volunteer Circles. If you're looking to volunteer in the community and just be with a really great group of people once a week, it's a really great opportunity as well. So that comes out during Clubs Fest. It's run by McMaster Open Circle, which also does a lot of really great like mindfulness activities as well. You can sign up for community volunteer groups. So there's everything from tutoring high school students to like working at senior centers. Just really great stuff where you can work really closely with like about 5 people, and you reflect on your experience as well. So community volunteer circles, that was really enjoyable for me.
Okay, there we go. So for my first year, despite having like all these amazing clubs at McMaster, I kind of stuck to what I did at high school and then just carried it through university. So I don't know if you guys are familiar or if your high school has this club also, but I did HOSA in high school, which is like a health careers competition based club. It gives students like insight into like the different fields of health. So
there's like stuff ranging from like physiology to like even like vet sci, EMC, forensic science. I was really into forensics in high school, so I continued that in university since it was offered here as well. And I encourage you to join if you're also interested. And second, I did a lot of band in high school as well. And here we also have, so there's like a bunch of bands. The one I did was the McMaster concert band. And what was nice about this one is you actually get a credit for it if you do a year of concert band. So it's not just a club, like it's an actual like course. You can make it an actual course. You can also opt to just do it as a club, and you don't need to like be a music student or anything. You can just, there's like an audition process, but once you get in, like it's like a commitment, like a 3-hour commitment per week. And I found that was really nice. It's like Thursday night, you go into like the nice concert hall and you play and you relax, and it takes your mind off of things. And it also doubles as a credit, so that was nice also. But having said that, there are also a few other bands. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but yeah, there are honestly so many clubs. So definitely go to Club Fest, and if there are stuff that like you did in high school, definitely look for them here as well, because like most of the time I found that a lot of my high school clubs were also in some way at McMaster. So.
Perfect. So that kind of wraps up our section on extracurriculars and research. And so our next section of questions is related to upper year specializations. And we're going to start off with what is the difference between the various specializations? And we're going to start with Sam.
Hey, yeah, so just the different, generally, like the specialization that you're in dictates what kind of courses you're going to take in your second, third, fourth year. Yeah, like there's usually like kind of a core group of courses that everyone takes, or in math or whatever, and then you kind of take additional ones based on what your specialization is. So like speaking on math, you have like AFM, which is actuarial and financial math. They take like finance courses, commerce courses, and they generally like don't take the same like third and fourth year pure math courses. I'm in math and computer science, so I take like pure math courses, and then I take courses like in computer science with the engineering department. Like I'm just in the computer science classes. There's like math and physics, math and biology. So generally, like unless you're in AFM, you're taking like the same like real analysis, like the third and fourth year pure math courses. And then you kind of just take additional ones based on what you want to do. There's also just like math and stats where you just take math courses, and then there's like math and just math. But yeah, kind of just whatever you're interested in. Specifically, you can just study that thing more. Yep.
Yeah, so basically that, what Sam said, is just you're going to take a specific set of courses. Maybe it's going to be like in addition to the core courses, or it's going to be somewhere going to be different. But I know in some cases you can take all the same courses in some cases only. At the same as the specialization without actually being in it, but usually there'll be like a course or two where they're going to reserve seats for people in the specialization, so you might have some trouble. So if you're planning to take the courses for the specialization, then just apply for the specialization, because you'll get recognized for it. So.
Perfect. Okay, the second question is, what things did you take into consideration while deciding your specialization program? And we're going to start with Haley.
Yeah, so definitely making my upper year specialization decision was not an easy one, but some few things that I did consider were, so I looked at like upper year course outline, so like all the required courses that you would have to take within your program, as well as like certain electives that you got like space in, and so just like looking and seeing if those courses were things that I was interested in and that I could see myself kind of doing and enjoying as well. I also did kind of scan like the faculty list of the professors within the department, because those are the profs that usually teach more of your classes, and as well are the profs that are more willing to give you research positions to like their own department. And so just kind of seeing if there's any areas where I would be interested, and just like kind of little niches of research and of like further education that I'd want to kind of pursue. And in the same way, just kind of looking at like I thought about like a thesis and just like where I could see myself and like what kind of main area of science that I would want to kind of specialize in. But obviously know that like these aren't permanent. So I've actually switched programs like 3 times. So I entered second year into biopsych. So that's biology and psychology, neuroscience, and behavior. But then after that, I switched out just to psychology, neuroscience, and behavior. And I've taken that degree in a more of like a neurophysiology way. And so there's definitely lots of just kind of different ways that you could take an upper year specialization. So just like kind of think about that as well. And yeah, just make sure that it's like something that you really think that you'll enjoy and that you feel will work with your schedule, as well as like any elective space that you have to take like any other outside courses. And also just like considering the community. So I came from integrated science, and it was a pretty small program, and I didn't want like anything that was like too big, so too like general, but that was just like my preference. And so going into some of the more specialized programs, it is a little bit smaller, so you do get a chance to kind of know other people as well, which I really valued and I really wanted to continue to do within my undergrad. But yeah.
Yeah, I had sort of a different trajectory from Haley. So I came into first year very confused about what I liked and what I didn't like, because I had the problem that I liked everything. And then going into second year, I had the problem that I still liked everything, but I knew I didn't like chemistry. So that was like narrowed it down just a little bit, but not a lot. So I chose medical and biological physics because I knew I really liked physics and math. And it gave me the most flexibility, I think, to still pursue those courses, but have the biology in there as well, which I really enjoyed. Another thing I really liked about this program was that it has the option for co-op. I know I've mentioned co-op a couple times, but I think for me, not knowing what I want to do, it's been a very valuable experience to be able to kind of test drive these careers as part of my degree and get paid for it. That's another bonus. But yeah, so that was really important to me as well. Like Haley said, looking at the upper year courses, some programs I looked into and was just like, wow, I'd rather die than take half of these courses. But the ones in med biophysics were like really great. Another kind of thing I want to plug is that most departments will have these like info nights when specialization time is coming up. And I thought it was really valuable to kind of talk to the professors in the department and see like kind of their perspective on things, as well as upper year students. I thought that was super helpful. And also the academic advisors are pretty good. Because one of the concerns I had was, if I go into this program and I hate it, what options are there to switch out? Is it better for me to do a major in physics and a minor in biology instead of the biophysics degree? Because there was a lot of overlaps with the courses in the programs. And they really just gave me a lot of insight into all of that. So I think definitely consult with people who are more knowledgeable about programs than you are. I think that's a very helpful piece of advice that I was given and that I would like to pass on.
I feel like I came from like a really kind of almost a different perspective from both of you, just because because I'm in medrad, we only really had like 2 or 3 options for specializations, and when you do specialize, it's really hard to go back because everything is so like specialized. I think the biggest thing though, when it came to choosing a specialization, is talking to upper years and seeing their perspective. One of the major things is like we get clinical placements in our 4th year. So it was interesting to talk to 4th years or even 3rd years that just went through their clinical placements and kind of seeing like what lifestyle you'd want to lead. Because like if you have ultrasound, there's going to be a lot more like, I guess, more sitting versus more active in radiography. And I feel like that's something you can really generalize into like choosing your specializations when you're in life sci, just kind of thinking like what you really want to do afterwards, and then talking to people who are there just to see their experiences and compare it to like others.
Amazing. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next question, which is, how do I know which specialization is best for me and which one I would enjoy the most? And we're going to start with Sam.
Yeah, so kind of like the obvious thing is just see what classes you enjoy the most. Generally, like your first year is going to be a lot more like broad, so you're going to take kind of like more classes in like all different kinds of fields. So, see what you like the most. It's already been said, but talk to upper years, look at the courses you're gonna have to take down the road. If you can like handle them, like Julia said, she saw some things she like couldn't continue going doing those. And then also like co-op is like really good to have. I think like getting the practical experience, if you're like in that kind of field, like being able to see what you like. Yeah, so like math and computer science doesn't have co-op, and I could go on about this for a long time. I think it really should. So I had to like go outside of that to like find work in my field. But like they're really, co-op office is like really great. You get like all these opportunities. What else? But yeah, so for me, like first year I was in ISI, and I like ended up kind of disliking everything except for the math. And we did like these research projects where we got to do I always wanted to do like the math part. I always wanted to do like the coding part. So I was like, okay, this is pretty like easy decision for me. But yeah, just see what you like and look into that. Do your research. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I'm gonna sound like a broken record at this point, but like definitely talk to upper years. Like I cannot stress at how like valuable I think this is. Because like I used to be a chem TA as well, and like I had first years who were like talking to me about their specializations, and they're all like, and I'm in chem bio by the way, so I'm doing all the chem stuff, and they're just like, yeah, I'm not into chemistry because like I don't like first year labs, or like I don't like the first year content, which is like a totally viable argument, but like. I was really like, I came to the program and it was just so different than like first year chem that I felt almost as if I got scammed, but in a good way because like it was better than I had imagined. Like I found that the way they taught things in like chem first year is like they would throw you like 12 equations and like 14 different chemical formulas, and they're like, just know it. And then in second year, they're like, okay, like we have more time to like go over like why this is it and like why this happens. So it's like you're not memorizing things anymore. You're like actually learning. And I feel like first year is like robbed of that sometimes because like they're just throwing information at you to get everyone at the same level, which like I understand, but definitely talk to upper years because like not everyone like came into my program like really enjoying like the labs, really enjoying like the coursework and stuff. Sometimes like there are people who are just looking for like they like the vibes of the department. Like it was very small and a lot of people knew each other because there wasn't a lot of people there. So it was like a really close, tight-knit community, which I also value as well. But then when you get to upper years, so then if like the first year course that you're taking is really like an indicator of like how the rest of your specialization is gonna look. You can tell I'm really biased because I'm in chem bio. So if you don't specialize in chem or if you don't like chem, that is completely okay. But I guess that is my experience.
Okay, so moving on to the next question. What is the benefit of doing an upper year specialization as opposed to a general stream? We're going to start with Rachel.
Some people already touched on some of these. So some benefits would be if you're super interested in certain upper year courses, the specializations that need them will get first priority during course enrollment to get into those courses. If your specialization is pretty small, you have like a more tight-knit cohort of students. Obviously, the biggest benefit, I guess, to doing a specialization is that your required courses are going to be tailored to things that you're interested in. And something that I found really helpful with the specialization is that if you're interested in that kind of broad area of or like this certain broad area of upper year courses, here's like the specialization that kind of tailors to that will make you take all of the prerequisite courses to be able to take the upper year courses that you want. It's just kind of easier to navigate, I find. And then some specializations will have courses where only students in that specific specialization will be able to take that course. And then similarly, some specializations require a thesis or a project-based course if you're interested in that kind of thing. You can look into the programs that require that and be able to do research that way.
Yeah, those are all great points. Yeah, I like the first, like, probably the most obvious thing would be that you have something like beside your degree when you graduate. Like, you'll say your degree name, like, and then hyphen, and then your specialization. And I mean, that might bring you some personal pride or something, but also it's a way for somebody to look at the degree you have and identify the things that you've done without actually having looked at your course history. So, like, now you're going to put like your courses on your resume and stuff when you apply to labs, but maybe in the future you won't, and it'll just say, like, if it says your specialization, it gives people a better idea, which may or may not matter depending on where you want to go with your career. But yeah, you get more focused classes. It takes a step in the direction that you want to go with your career. And because you have things that are required now, you don't run into things like the reserved seat capacity when you enroll, because it's reserved for you. So that's always nice. And yeah, you get the smaller courses. A lot of times you get a tighter knit community. You can make some close friends in your specialization. Yeah, and like different specializations have different benefits depending on like what they are. So I know for biochemistry, it's literally just that you're taking extra courses, but for other things, like, you could get different types of placements or different types of opportunities based on your specialization. So that's always good to look into as well.
Okay, so moving on to the next question. How do I know what classes I need to take for upper year specializations? And also, how do I plan what to take if I'm not sure what I want to go into? And we're starting with Rachel again.
Yeah, so if I could just answer this with like one word or like one thing, it would be mapside.ca, which is the like kind of second year program planning website that McMaster Science has, where you can put in all the courses that you're planning to take in first year, and it'll like spit out all of the second year specializations that you could get into if you take those courses. If you are not sure what you want to get into and you want to keep more of those options open, you can kind of tweak your first year courses so that it like spits out more options for second year specializations by taking different first year courses. And I guess the longer answer for that would be looking at the academic calendar and seeing what first year courses you need to get into the program and what like upper year programs you'd need to take once you in that program, and make sure that you like all of them. Because like Julia said, I looked at some programs and it'll say like, oh, you need to take 3 courses from this list, and it's like, oh no, I don't like any of them. And then when you find a program that you like, it's like, oh, I like more than 3 of these. Like, how am I supposed to choose between them? So yeah, I literally had it ready to like put into the chat as well. So thank you, Jesse.
Okay, when I was in first year, I for some reason didn't use MapSci. It sounds like an awesome like tool to use in hindsight. I should have used it. I honestly used the academic calendar and kind of like looked at all the specializations I was kind of interested in, and then like seeing how it matched up with like my current first year schedule. But like I guess there's like a meta way to plan your first year, and like I think if you take like, like 2 or like a full year of bio, a full year of chem, a full year of physics, a full year of math, and like a full year of psych, then like you should be good for like most, if not all, the programs. But like also, it's like if you know that you're not gonna like chemistry or like physics or whatever, and you're taking an elective just for the sole purpose of opening that avenue up, then what's the point of opening like this avenue if you know you're not going to enjoy it, right? So take things you enjoy. Like if you see a course that's like really interested or whatnot, and like there's a lot of like level 1 science courses that are not just like like chem and stuff, but there's like astronomy and like other things that I can't really think of off the top of my head. So like explore those definitely, and just see what you like, as opposed to I guess forcefully opening your options and just not enjoying it.
Yeah, I would basically recommend all the same things. Like MapSci was on my list of things to talk about, and also the academic calendar because it's more specific than MapSci. So if you find something on MapSci that interests you, then go find it in the calendar. But I wouldn't don't start with the calendar. It's too complicated and it's way too much information to try and remember it all. But yeah, I don't know if it was mentioned, it probably was, but my favorite part about MapSci is that if you click on a program, there's an option you can go to like course planning, put in the courses you're taking. It'll tell you the percentage of like completion for each thing, basically. So it'll tell you basically what you can apply to next year if you put in your courses, which is great. And yeah, if you're not sure if you want to do it, but you think you might want to do it, then it doesn't hurt just to take the course anyway that'll allow you to do it, so you have the option, because you don't want to set up walls for yourself, because taking the courses later kind of sucks. You kind of want to have your summer sometimes.
Okay, so moving on to the next question. Can I change my upper year specialization after second year? And we're going to start with Jessie.
Yeah, so I think this was talked about earlier, but if you have all the required courses, like if you're not sure about this specialization or another one, and you just like take the required courses for both, if they're similar enough, you can always switch later. I went into like the math and stats pure math subplan in second year, and now I'm realizing I want a bit more flexibility, so I'm just dropping back to the like general math and stats plan, but I don't know. I still don't know. Maybe I'll decide I want to do a different one and take the required courses for that. So it is pretty flexible, at least in math. Another point that we were just talking about, how to like plan your program, I guess, is meeting with an academic advisor. If you just Google like McMaster academic advisors, there's an online like office, and so you can just go in there and meet with someone and be like, hey, I don't know what I'm doing, what do I need to take, I don't know how to use the McMaster academic calendar, and that's been helpful for me in the past. So yeah, academic advisors.
Yeah, so I just put a link to academic advising in the chat. They do drop in online, just to extend what Jessie said. Definitely want to recommend the academic advisors as well. In my experience, they have been nothing but helpful when you go to an appointment. Sometimes they're a little bit slow by email, but if you go in person, or like I guess to a drop-in session, they're super, super helpful. Just kind of adding to what Jessie said, you can always shadow a program, like she mentioned, take some of the similar courses, and that makes it easier to switch around. But if you say you want to completely change things around, like you should be able to do that. It might add an extra semester or two to your degree, but that's always an option as well. Don't feel like you're locked in for 4 years to a major that you hate. You can decide. I've had friends in third year just say like, I thought I liked physics and I actually want to be a midwife, and then they just start fresh. And a lot of their credits will transfer. Some of them won't, some of them will, but then at least they get to do what they're really passionate about. And in my friend's case, she did 2 years in physics, and then she'll have basically only 1 year transferred. So she has to do an extra, but it's all good.
Sorry, couldn't find my mic there. And we have one of our last questions, which is, what happens if you don't get the upper year specialization that you wanted?
So yeah, definitely very upsetting, very disappointed when you don't get your top choice, right? Just to give a background on kind of how you specialize. So you go into like Mosaic or whatever, and you choose 4 specializations, or at least in my year, that's how it works. You choose 4 specializations, no more, no less, and then you rank them in order from like your top choice to like your last choice. And then, you know, you put them in, then you apply, and then you lock in your choices. And then one day in like May or June, you kind of log into Mosaic, and then they just tell you what program you're in or what specialization you're in. Like, even if you meet the requirements for like all 4, they only show you like your top, or like your next top. You don't get the choice of like, I mean, I think you can reach out later on, and then like if you want to switch your priorities later, I think that's always an option. But generally, like they just give you like whatever you're first eligible for based on your priorities list. So now that you know that you have 4 options, I think before you even apply to specializations, it's really good to look at not just like your top and what you're interested in, but other programs that have similar elements or similar options to what your top specialization is. So in my case, I really wanted to be in chem bio, but I knew that there's also a chemistry program, and like 60 to 80% of the time, our courses are like exactly the same. Like all the courses that are available to chem bio students are also available to chem students, and vice versa. So I knew that like even if I didn't get into chem bio, like at least I could like still go to chem and still enjoy like the courses that I would have enjoyed. Having said that, also I think some specializations are, I don't know what the like, specific term is, but it's like open entry, I think, where they're not like competitive based, and as long as you meet like the required, like the minimum GPA and like have all the required courses, like they just let you in. So chemistry is an example for that. So I knew that like even if chem bio I didn't get in because I wasn't competitive, like they let everyone in chem because I met the minimum GPA and I met all the course requirements. So I knew like I was good and I was confident in that. I think, I don't want to speak for the biology department, but I think biology is also like that. And then they also have like biochem and like mol bio, which is a little more competitive. So having that as like a backup plan, I think is good, because then at least you're not like put in some other department that you're not interested in, whatnot. Like there's always like that backup that you can rely on. And you know, your education path is not always going to be linear. Like worst comes to work, like a lot of people said in the panel, like you can always switch. And I also know people who like, you know, they got in second year, they thought this was like, you know, their place, and then they started over. They're like, I'm going to go into first year, like in biosci. Or I had someone who started off as a humanities student and then went to OCAD for a year and then came back and now is doing chemistry and now biology. So, you know, there's really no like linear path. It's like you make your own path, right, based on like your interests. So don't be afraid to do that. It's a lot more common than you think. What's most important is that you make the best out of your time at university, whether that's 4 years or 6 years or whatnot. So whatever it takes, and really don't let your specialization or whatever department you get into limit how you perceive like other opportunities. So even if there's stuff outside of your department, outside of your program, like reach out. Send an email. The worst they can say is like no or like never respond to you. And I know for my program too, there are people who are doing thesis in like the engineering department or like the health science department that's not, you know, within the chem bio department. So there's always like room to like explore your opportunities, explore like other areas, even if you're in a specialization. So yeah.
Okay. I think we have time for just one general question before we cap it off at 3. And I think the one that Julie and I decided to go with was how do I make the most out of my university experience? Because I think it sums up everything really well. And we're going to start with Jonathan.
Yep. Yeah, like I said earlier, I'm trying to think of anything new to say. I don't want to keep repeating sort of my same life messages over and over again. But the more you get to know me, the more you realize that I just say the same things over and over again. Story of my life. Have fun. Like honestly, like if you don't like what you're doing in first year, like don't stick with it because everyone else is sort of doing that. Really take the time to experiment, explore different things. Yeah, like if, for example, you know you don't like chemistry first year, don't take another chemistry course. You're gonna hate it. Like you're not gonna convince yourself, right? It's not gonna change. So keep that in mind. But also like be open and make a lot of even if you're not into like making a lot of new friends, like at least meet people, because you'll realize that in university there's like so many different people with so many different interests, and like the way they work will definitely rub off on you. So when you have time, like if you're in like the library, if it's open and you see someone like next to you working, just like strike up like a 5-minute conversation, get to know sort of what they're doing, what they like, what courses they're taking, how they're spending their time, and you'll see that like their motivation will also inspire you as well. So I would say that's how you make the most of your time.
Yeah, I agree with everything Jonathan said. One thing I'd like to add is definitely connect with people, but at the same time, the less time you spend comparing yourself to those around you, the more time you focus on yourself. The other thing with university is if you want to enjoy it, like learn from people that you can learn from, but at the same time, don't stress out over things that you can't control. To a certain extent, you have to be okay with some level of unknowns in your life. So I would say make sure you do that as well, because you need to like focus on yourself in these couple of years, enjoy what you're doing, like you said. Making connections is something that everyone's stressed about so much that I'm not going to repeat it to you guys. You know the level of importance. But I will say like there's something to enjoy in university for everyone. So definitely keep an open mind too. That's the other thing is like, throughout your academic journey and even just in your social life, like keep an open mind, be willing to see and explore new things that you weren't able to. I mean, yeah.
Just really quickly. Jonathan. Oh, before Jonathan goes, I the best piece of advice I had going into first year was like everyone is in the same boat, everyone's stressed and doesn't know anyone. Like the best thing you can do is just really put yourself out there. And like I remember in Welcome Week, like in like Centro, which is one of the like food places, like I just walked up to random people in line and was like, hey, like what's up? Because it's scary, but it's definitely worth it, and it's how you're gonna like find the right people for you is like just putting yourself out there. Um, because yeah, and also grades are, are like have some importance, but like don't kill yourself over like getting a bad mark on something. Like that's not gonna matter in the long run. Like work hard obviously, but yeah, just have fun with it. It's gonna be great.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one of my mentors. His favorite quote is like, "Pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional." I think that like sums up the entire university experience. Like, there are parts of university where you're gonna hate, and it's gonna be absolutely miserable. But if you have the right people, connections, things that you like to do alongside, then you'll learn to enjoy it just a little bit more. So even though it's hard, it's definitely bearable and can definitely be enjoyable. So